Welcome to the Nevcast, where three bros talk business, art, justice, and the pursuit of Jesus.
Any day above ground is a good day.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and kiss 30 minutes goodbye with Peter Nevland,
Dave Nevland,
and
Rashid.
Welcome to the Nevcast. Today, it's an interesting day. I kind of want to, been thinking about this. I guess I think about this a lot, and, we sort of talked, I guess we talked a little bit on the last episode, Washington Phillips, recorded a bunch of stuff, goes back to just being a farmer who sings some songs on the porch for his kids, or this guy Matthew Ward, who's incredibly well known for, a little over a decade, maybe 2 decades or something like that, and then goes back to being a regular guy. Sometimes you see people who are incredibly famous, but then they stop, producing movies. They just become like regular family member, and at some point in time, when the next generation comes, people don't know, not too many people know who they are anymore. Kids today have a really difficult time identifying who's the guy, David Cassidy, he was the highest paid entertainer of his day.
For how long? Not very long.
I don't know, for maybe 5 years or so, right? It's kind of a Justin Bieber type of guy, but at some point, Justin Bieber, right? It's on the cover of everything, and then, he gets married, pulls back a little bit, now he's starting to put music out again, maybe he had to get right, stuff like that. But this whole thing of celebrity culture, why is it that at certain times we pay attention to people, and at certain times we don't? And even in the church, a place where, let's say Paul comes and says, hey, in Christ there's neither male or female, slave or free, Jew or Gentile, but all are one in Christ Jesus, right? Christ is all in all. Why do we, go, oh, that person, they did this just amazing thing, but our natural tendency is to go, well, they did that, but I could never do anything like that. Yeah. And that person would go, well, it was the Holy Spirit working through me, or, I don't even know. I don't feel all that special.
I'm
right?
just the vessel. It's passing.
Just the person.
And we don't have our brother Rashid again with us today.
Yes.
He's unavailable at this time, but I think he might say, remember on one of our other episodes, he was like, I think those guys just trying to make money.
Well, there's that too, right?
Now,
so you've got...
I've been reading about the prophets, like the minor prophets and even the major prophets, but Old Testament prophets. And there's a couple of guys that, their stuff is enshrined for the rest of time in the Bible, and they only prophesied for a span of 3 or 4 years.
Right. Amos,
not very long, not very much.
Breeder from Tekoa.
Yeah, right. But huge prophecy.
Huge.
Massive stuff that we are affected by today.
Yeah.
Right? Like he prophesied the tabernacle of David was going to be restored.
Restored, yeah.
Yeah. And which was Jesus, but which is also worship, right? Which is also access to the presence of God.
Well, and then he was like, and all you who worship all these other things, prepare to meet your God. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Crap. This is going to be, the day of the Lord's going to be, right? And so that's why, John the Baptist, like Jesus shows up, because John the Baptist was saying, he's coming with fire. So he was reading from Amos, right? And he's going to come in fire. And Joel, right? He's going to burn up the great and terrible day of the Lord. And Jesus shows up healing people and being kind to little kids and everything like that. And says, the Spirit of the Lord's upon me. It's the time of the Lord's favor. All this stuff. He said, well, is it you or do we look for another? And he had been saying, he saw him. Like the Spirit said, this is the one.
Right.
He says, this is the one that I'm not worthy to loose your sandal strap. But then he's in prison, and he's like, send word and ask him, like, are you the one? Do we look for another? Because, hey, I baptized you. You got the chance, you got the chance to be king here. You could do it. It's time for the fire. When's the fire coming? Isn't the fire coming? Or maybe are you just preparing the way for another dude, and I was preparing the way for you? Right? And Jesus
quotes
responds.
the prophet.
Yeah. Go tell
Blind
John
see.
things you see and hear. The blind see, the lame walk. The deaf hear. The poor have the gospel preached to them. Yeah. And blessed is he who is not offended because of me. And there he is, showing up.
Interesting response.
Showing up differently than we expected.
I mean, even Christ was a celebrity for 3 years or less.
Yeah, he was definitely a celebrity.
Definitely a celebrity.
I have never walked into a city and spontaneously people started taking off their coats, throwing them down on the road, ripping branches off of trees, which were relatively sacred, and waving them for me, saying, "Blessed is he who comes." So he was kind of known.
It's interesting.
In his area.
The more you read about his progression in that 3 years, it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't. I don't know how it could have lasted any longer. How like really, in as far as like, it's just the powers that be. We're gonna find a way. I mean, it wasn't in their power.
Yeah.
Right.
But Palm Sunday, look, you're accomplishing nothing. The whole world is going after him.
Yeah, that's right.
Except you.
Yeah, except y'all.
Except you guys.
But maybe Nicodemus.
Well,
he got touched, and then he stood up.
Of course, yeah.
We don't know exactly what happened to him.
Okay, but I mean, getting back to the celebrity culture. So I'm thinking about this one time. So when I went out touring, I had these funny things. We perform, and he'd get these questions like, "Are you famous?" And I'd be like, "Why do you even ask that question?" If I was,
what a weird question is that?
Well,
anyway?
Yeah, like me saying that I'm famous, is that going to do something for you or whatever? And then I remember this one time we went to this, I guess it was a church, but it was like a new church being established. They were meeting in the basement of a church building as the space that they had to meet. I think it was because it was small enough. It didn't feel like an overwhelming space. But we were about to perform at this club, and they had found somebody in their church body had gotten an email from a friend of ours and said, "These guys are going to be in Pittsburgh. You got to check them out." And so they brought it to the attention of their church leadership team. Then they, said, "Hey, would you come and play at our church service, and then we'll come to your show?" And I was thinking, I don't know how anybody else is going to come to our show, so heck yeah. We love a crowd, right? Like back to Rashi's comment, maybe these guys are just out there trying to make some money at the time, right, on that show that evening. But anyway, so we go in, and somebody even asked us, like, are you guys Christians? And I was like, isn't it obvious, like from our music, whatever? So we're all setting up.
That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. So we're setting up.
Obvious and make other people want to do this as well.
Right. But there's just all sorts of funny stuff happening there. So we're setting up I have to set up the merchandise table, right, for afterwards, so I can sell my wares in the temple. But whatever. No, I'm setting up my merchandise table, and there was a girl that walked by me, and I was like, "Hey, could you help me? Do you know where I could get a table?" She's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm busy. I can't. I got to do this other stuff." And I was like, "Okay, no worries, And so anyway, so then I go to the pastor who I had hung out with at Quaker Steak and Lube the night before. We had a beer together, and I said, "Hey, BJ, I need a table. Do you know anybody that can give me a table?" So I go, "Oh, yeah." He calls that girl over. And he goes, "Hey, come here." And he said, "Hey, could you help Peter get a table, to put up his merch?" And she's like, "Oh, Peter, who's Peter?" And he's like, he's right here. She looks at me and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I just thought, and all of a sudden, then she was like super attentive, super helpful. And I was like, what changed?
Oh, the presentation, the vamp. I mean,
I had somebody who promoted me.
Yeah.
Somebody with authority in her life.
Yeah.
And in a position of authority said, this person It's valuable. And I thought, well, why did it take that? Right?
Doesn't always take that.
Doesn't always take that. But why do we do that? You know, certain people get special treatment and certain people don't. When I went to a big festival in England, Soul Survivor Festival, where we kind of blew up, right? And we got known, and kids, it's like, before we play, you could walk through the festival. Nobody stops me at all. I'm a nobody.
Yeah.
Right? Just a tall, lanky, shaggy-looking dude, And then after we performed, couldn't walk more than 20 feet without being stopped by someone. Oh, my gosh, you were that guy. Then the funny thing is, to the leadership there, if you were a musician, like in a band, playing as an artist, you had to, they made it hard for you. You got to, be in the, low spot or whatever. If you were on the worship team, that kind of musician, they would put you in a really nice camper.
Wow.
You got to stay in your place. If you were a speaker, that was even better.
Huh.
So it was like a hierarchy of Christian celebrity.
Okay.
So you get up, right? And I was just like, this is weird. This is so weird. It's like, just because I'm in this other role, I'm not a minister of, the gospel. And so there's, at that aspect, it's like, okay, well, so something not quite right about that, And, so that's kind of...
The thing that changed was the manifestation of your gifting.
Maybe so, yeah.
Manifestation of your talent. I mean, anybody, once you've seen who they are, their talent, their gifting, or whatever, well, it's different. They're a different person to you now.
So what do we see, though, in talent and gifting that makes us go, oh, my goodness? They're better than, separate from, elevated over.
I mean, something they've done that has inspired you.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy who does this every day in his life, he helps people across the street. Well, all of a sudden that gets on a video, and wow, man, he's a hero because he really helped somebody out. And when, what he does it all the time maybe, but he just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and somebody made a video of it and went viral. Well, now he's a hero.
Yeah.
He'd always been a hero, but his hero, his inspiring quality was made manifest.
Well, someone framed the story in a way that you saw him in that light too.
That's right.
So it sounds like
the narrative.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a couple things. Yeah, there's a couple things that are happening, right? There's a couple things that are happening.
I didn't prepare for this talk, by the way. I don't know. I'm talking off the top of my head.
No, I know. We're talking off the top of our heads. This is just, we're hanging out. So someone, first of all, there had to be a gift that was possessed by this person, right? Any person is out there.
That they had developed or something.
They've developed. Maybe they practiced it. Maybe they had it naturally. It's like they were born with it. I don't know. But at some point they discover it and they do it a lot. Okay, so they've got this gift. They're doing something. Somebody else has to spot it. What are they spotting? They're seeing, I kind of think they're seeing some element of a human being kind of glorified.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they're like, that fits into the story that all of us, that we're supposed to have something special. We've sort of lost something. There's something that we've lost as humans, but in reality, we're all hoping that at some point we will become the people that we know that we could be. This person is
extraordinary.
And it's easier to see that in other people and believe that about other people, right? Because we don't experience the depravity of other people as much as we experience our own depravity. So it's
tougher to see that in ourselves, and maybe even tougher to promote that about ourselves.
Right. We see it in somebody else, and we're like, oh my goodness, you've got this thing. And so now that person sets it in the context, and other people recognize it and go, oh yeah, that does fit that story, that narrative of this person definitely is a hero, or this person definitely is a celebrity worth noting, all that kind of stuff. And so while the...
and a lot of the reasons for those celebrity things today are just, what?
Silly.
Silly, dude.
Yeah.
Because you can play a video game pretty well. And narrate it well.
Well, because you can speak well in front of an audience of people.
Yeah.
Or because maybe, the Lord said, hey, pray for this person, and you prayed for that person, then they got healed.
Yeah.
Now it must be you that's got this,
the
special gift type of deal, and maybe you do, right? But then the elevation of that, how do we walk where we're aware that each of us have our gifts and our flaws? I mean, there's some good part of that.
That's a humility thing that needs to come, right?
That's a humility. You have to. How do we retain the humility? At the same time, the other part of it is if it requires somebody calling it out of this person, how could we be the people who call that out of each other?
Yeah, totally.
And be looking for and realizing, that God wants to make all of us glorious. And call us all back to this level that is free from the curse.
Something comes to my mind, and I looked this up a little while ago.
I was hoping this would happen. Something come to your mind. I was hoping that would happen. Something
yes.
would come to your mind.
You've inspired something to come to my mind.
Oh, no, not okay.
You have done it. It's you are the one that have done it. That has done it.
Hold on. I'm rising in my chair.
Well, in my mind, anyways, in my estimation.
That's right. Okay, what came to your mind? Sorry, I hope I didn't cause it to go away.
It didn't. We've been brothers long enough for it not.
Okay.
So, the word prophet in the Bible, right? In the Old Testament, because hey, this is in the pursuit of Jesus, this whole thing. So it's not just philosophical, but
if you didn't realize, we want you to know Jesus,
and we want you to read the Bible because it's good, it's inspiring, it's heroic. Even.
Plus, you might meet him.
But this just comes up, and I mean, it's something that I thought was fascinating. A prophet, right? And they were celebrities. Like I just talked about them a little bit.
Definitely.
They were definitely celebrities because Jesus. I mean, even Jesus said, "A prophet's not without honor." It's like people give prophets honor,
except in his own country.
Except in his own country, when people know, oh no, he's the brother of that guy, and he made my table over here. He's nobody special. But The Hebrew, that I probably am mispronouncing it, but the Hebrew word for prophet is this word nabi, or something like that, nabi.
Right.
And it basically just means a spokesperson.
A spokesperson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A spokesperson. Now, the prophet was supposed to be a spokesperson for God.
Right.
But it wasn't necessarily a real special thing. In fact, it was easy for you to be a false prophet.
True.
And people make themselves into false prophets. I mean, people would call themselves prophets who were speaking for God and weren't necessarily speaking for God.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And there were all these tests on whether someone was a prophet for the true God or whether someone was a false prophet. So just being a prophet wasn't a big deal. Lots of people were prophets, a spokesperson, right?
Yeah.
But it strikes me at the end of Moses' life, God says, I'm going to raise up a prophet like Moses. So he was a prophet, but he was a special kind of prophet. Because what kind of prophet was he? He was a kind that God spoke to as a man speaks to his friend. Because God said, you're different. You know me.
Yeah.
And it was said there, I'm going to raise up a prophet like Moses. So it wasn't enough just to be a prophet. You want to be a prophet like Moses. And what Moses did was, I mean, he advocated for the people all the time to God.
Right.
And if the people criticized him, he didn't really get defensive. It's odd. I mean, they said stupid things, and he didn't get that defensive all the time. A lot of times what he would do is he would go and fall on his face before God and say, God, what do I need to do?
Right.
That's a humble prophet. That's a guy who's been humbled in the presence of God.
Yeah.
So, man, I mean, become a prophet like Moses. The ultimate prophet like Moses was Christ.
Right.
It was Jesus. But there were ones before that. I mean, Samuel, different guys. So, and there's the redemption of a celebrity status that we could get towards the celebrity who is the prophet.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, you're not going to stop because you're not going to stop the wrong attitude by people who look up to a celebrity. Because the people of Israel, they got to the point where Moses said, "Cleanse yourselves, draw near." God wants to speak to you.
Yeah.
and they were like, no, you
We're
go
afraid.
and talk to God for us.
And then tell us.
Don't let us speak to God face to face. Otherwise, we're going to die.
Like,
Now, it's interesting. Okay, so
you're not going to die.
So when you said spokesperson, that stirred another thing, because when it says that we were created in the image of God, right? That word image is actually the same term that's used for male and female looking idols. So idols that look like humans.
Okay.
It is the same exact term. So basically, we were created as God's idol.
Interesting image.
Yeah, so you have to understand,
Mental
what's
image?
the idol? The idol is not the object of worship in ancient mind and ancient culture. The idol was meant to be the representation of the god, and that they would even have a mouth cleansing ceremony for the idol when they set it up in the temple, usually on the 6th day of the 7-day temple dedication ceremony, right?
Right.
And so the idol was supposed to receive messages from the divine being and translate them to the king or the priest, so that they could understand them, and then they could tell them to the people. So basically what the idol was the spokesperson for the deity that it represented. And so they were only worshiping before the idol in order to give veneration to the actual deity that they thought meant behind it. Now, the prophets, they made fun of the idols, because they were like, it wasn't that they were saying you're not actually worshiping a deity behind it, you're actually worshiping this. They're saying there's no deity behind it.
Yeah.
So they're saying it's just a piece of wood, it's just a piece of stone, it's just a piece of gold. Like, why are you can't talk, and whoever worships it becomes like it, right? It's like you're actually worshiping. And Paul brings it in the New Testament. He says, well, what they're actually doing is they're worshiping demons. There's actually demons behind those idols. But it's interesting that it says our role was to be basically God's mouthpiece, was to be God's representation. And if you look at humans, you're supposed to see something of what God looks like. And I think maybe we're all hoping that when we see somebody doing something extraordinary, we're seeing some amount of what God looks like.
Come on.
Recaptured. And so, I think that there's something important there in like calling that out of people. If we're going to really be the spokesperson, for God, then what does God do? God sees who we are before we see it. He identifies it. He sees the good in us. He calls the good out. He calls out things that are not as though they are.
Yeah.
Right? It is God who declares things. And so he declares our name to us even. And I think that that's something that's going on with this. It's this almost slight misappropriation of what that's supposed to be for, where suddenly we give so much deference to it that it gets a little bit unhealthy.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is that the enemy, I think we've got an enemy, Satan, his demons, whatever, they come and they start whispering to us, well, that person's that way, but you're just a nobody. You're just not that way. And in reality, man, you got something special inside of you. You got an incredible story that you need to believe came from God, because what does God want to do? He wants to glorify you, and eventually he wants to give you equal status with himself.
That sounds weird.
It does sound weird, but what else would we be if we're marrying Jesus?
Right.
If we're supposed to be the bride and he's supposed to be the bridegroom, do you think Jesus wants to marry a lesser than?
Right.
Have his little, person he can tell what to do? That's not,
Right.
And so if we're going to marry him, somehow God's going to make us glorious. And if you look in Psalm 45, that's what the woman that it talks about, the bride that it talks about in Psalm 45, gets elevated to the status of the whole world and people coming and bowing down before her. And it even says in Revelation, it says, to him who overcomes, I will give him this thing. And then it says, and I will make all those who persecuted you to come and bow at your feet. That is that's a term that's used as worship.
Right.
In throughout the Bible, most of the time when they say, and he worshipped Jesus or something like that, it meant he fell prostrate at his feet in front of him.
Yeah,
and so
in
there
full
was
submission.
Now that's an interesting thing, right? So in some way, yes, you're meant to be glorious.
Yeah, that's in the eternal day when the laws that we are bound to now don't exist anymore.
Well, so here's maybe the little interesting thing is the way she becomes more glorious is by worshiping the King.
Yeah.
The way she gets elevated to that status of equality with him is by worshiping him. It says, because he is your Lord, worship him.
Yeah.
And so the ultimate act of humility on our part becomes also the ultimate act of glorification. And when the ultimate act of glorification maybe is missing the ultimate act of humility, that's when it gets unhealthy.
Yeah. Not realizing who you are.
Well, John,
in the face of God.
John in Revelation, he sees the angel.
Right.
He falls down and worships the angel.
Like, oh, no, don't do that.
You know what the awesome part about the angel did the exact right thing.
He did the exact right thing.
Hey, don't do that.
Yeah, because he had seen how that couldn't go too well for the last angel that happened to.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just like you. Isn't that wild?
He's not just like him at all.
But he said that to John.
Like, I'm in the same place as you.
I'm just like you. I'm just a fellow servant.
Yeah.
Worship God.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, maybe this is a call out to people who are being given that place. And there's only so much you can do. But when somebody gives you that ultimate deference and you sense that there's not that humility accompanying it, it's going, hey, come on, man. Just like you. Remember? Who's the one? And he lives in you too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best use of a stage or a platform.
Yeah. And at the same time for us, how do we call out and give honor to each other and say, no, I know who you are.
Yeah.
I think some of the best messages I have to my kids when they're acting up and not behaving is, no, I know you're a boy who loves to obey.
Yeah.
I know you're really good. And so I want you to behave that way. Can you do that? Yes.
Yeah.
Call you to who you really are.
Yeah. We love correction like that because it brings us close to the one correcting us.
Yeah.
It doesn't cast us away. Why are you doing that? You're getting punished for that. Shouldn't have done that.
Right.
It doesn't bring us close to the one that we actually have respect for. And, when the correction brings us closer, it gives us more respect for the person.
That's right.
That we're respecting.
Yeah. Man, I miss Rashi.
Yeah, we need that third perspective.
I know. We need to get him back on here.
He'll be back next time.
Okay. Anyway, well, thanks for joining us. Go be glorious, because you've got that in you, and at the same time, give that glory to the one who made you, who really deserves it.
Because it's better that way.
Yeah, and call that out in other people. Man. Anybody can criticize. Anybody can call out the flaws in other people, but it takes real maturity. It takes what we've all been looking for to recognize beauty and call that out, especially when somebody's not treating you right or whatever, something like that.
Yeah. Otherwise, Otherwise, you just get depressed because you can't live up to what you think you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Feel free to leave us some comments, and we will see you next Wednesday on the
Nevcast.
That's it for the Nevcast this time. Join us next week when we talk justice, business, and art in pursuit of Jesus. We will see you soon.